Chapter 1. Stop relying on motivation. Part 1. The myth of the spark. We have been lied to about how greatness is achieved. We are told that one day we will be struck by a lightning bolt of inspiration, a spark that will suddenly make the hard work feel easy, the early mornings feel effortless, and the sacrifices feel like joy. We wait for this feeling like a traveler waiting for a bus that is never coming. Motivation is a guest that shows up to your house when the sun is out, the fridge is full, and the music is playing. But the moment the lights go out and the work gets heavy, motivation slips out the back door without saying goodbye. If your strategy for success depends on feeling like it, you have already lost. You are building a skyscraper on a foundation of clouds. Think about the most successful people you know. Not the influencers who post highlights of their best days, but the true masters, the surgeons, the elite athletes, the master craftsmen. Do you think a neurosurgeon wakes up for a 12-hour surgery and waits to feel inspired before they pick up the scalpel? Do you think the marathon runner training in a freezing rainstorm at 5 a.m. is motivated? No, they are disciplined. They have moved past the need for a feeling and have replaced it with a system. Controlled intensity is not about having more fire than everyone else. It is about knowing how to keep the furnace burning even when you don't want to. It is the transition from the amateur mindset to the professional mindset. The amateur works when they are inspired. The professional works on schedule. Part 2. The neurochemistry of the trap. To stop relying on motivation, you must understand why your brain craves it. We are biological creatures designed for survival, not for peak performance. Your brain has a primary goal: to conserve energy and avoid discomfort. When you think about a new goal, starting a business, getting in shape, writing a book, your brain releases a hit of dopamine. This is the motivation phase. It feels amazing. You buy the gear, you tell your friends, you plan the schedule. But dopamine is a reward for anticipation, not for execution. As soon as the actual work begins, the grinding, the repetition, the boredom, the dopamine vanishes. Suddenly, the spark is gone. Your brain looks at the effort required and says, "This is costing too much energy. Let's go back to something easy, like scrolling through social media or watching TV." This is the point where 99% of people quit. They think they've lost their passion. In reality, they just ran out of free dopamine. Chasing excitement weakens your discipline because it trains you to only act when there is an immediate reward. To master controlled intensity, you must learn to operate in the dopamine gap, that space between the initial excitement and the final result. You fill that gap with a system. Part 3. Systems over moods. A system is a predetermined set of actions that you perform regardless of your internal weather. It is the mechanical part of your life. Consider the real-world professional. Take a professional writer like Stephen King. He doesn't wait for the muse to visit him. He sits at the same desk, at the same time, every single morning, and he stays there until he hits his word count. Some days the words are brilliant. Some days they are terrible. It doesn't matter. By the end of the year, he has a book, while the motivated writer has a folder full of half-finished ideas. When you create a system, you are removing the need to make a decision. Decision fatigue is the silent killer of intensity. Every time you have to ask yourself, should I work out today? Or should I make those sales calls now? You are using up valuable cognitive energy. By the time you decide to do it, you're already tired. Controlled intensity means you decide once. You decide on Sunday night what your week looks like. You decide at night what your morning looks like. When the time comes to execute, the decision is already a ghost. There is only the action. You don't negotiate with yourself. You don't listen to the voice that says 5 more minutes. You treat your schedule like a law, not a suggestion. Part 4. The mechanical start. The hardest part of any task is the transition from rest to motion. In physics, this is inertia. In psychology, it's the threshold of activation. If you look at the entire mountain, you will stay in the valley. If you think about the 3 hours of deep work ahead of you, your brain will find a reason to procrastinate. The secret to controlled intensity is the mechanical start. The mechanical start is a 5-minute ritual that requires zero inspiration. If you are a runner, the system isn't running 5 miles. The system is putting on my running shoes and locking the front door. Once the shoes are on and you are outside, the resistance is broken. If you are a writer, the system is opening the laptop and typing one sentence. You must lower the barrier to entry until it is impossible to fail. You aren't trying to find the intensity to finish. You are just finding the mechanics to start. Intensity is scheduled, not emotional. You don't have to feel like a lion to start the work. You just have to act like a machine. The feeling of intensity usually arrives after you've been working for 20 minutes. Motivation doesn't lead to action. Action leads to motivation. Part 5. The Daily Operating Code. To stop relying on motivation, you need to develop what I call a daily operating code. This is a list of non-negotiable actions that define your day. Imagine your life is a business. A business doesn't close just because the CEO is in a bad mood. A business has standard operating procedures. What are yours? The wake-up standard. You wake up at the same time, regardless of how you slept. The deep work block. You dedicate the first 90 minutes of your day to your highest priority before checking email or social media. The digital boundary. You put your phone in another room during work hours. These aren't goals, they are standards. Goals are about what you want to achieve. Standards are about who you are. When you live by standards, you realize that your mood is irrelevant to your output. You can be tired and still be intense. You can be sad and still be disciplined. You can be bored and still be productive. This is the ultimate form of freedom. When you stop being a slave to your emotions, you become the master of your results. You no longer have to check with your feelings to see what your life is going to look like today. You already know, because you designed the system. Part 6. Training the repetition. Every time you execute when you don't feel like it, you are training a muscle in your brain, the prefrontal cortex. This is the seat of willpower and logic. Every time you give in to the "I'll do it tomorrow" voice, you are strengthening the amygdala, the part of the brain that seeks comfort and safety. Controlled intensity is the result of thousands of small victories over the urge to be comfortable. It is the accumulation of every time you chose the system over the mood. In the real world, the people who win are not the ones with the most talent or the most passion. They are the ones who are the most consistent. They are the ones who show up on the rainy Tuesdays when nobody is watching and there is no applause. They don't wait for a sign from the universe. They don't check their horoscope. They don't wait to feel ready. They simply execute. Summary of Chapter 1. Motivation is a luxury. Systems are a necessity. To master controlled intensity, you must kill the expectation of feeling good. Accept that much of the work will be boring or uncomfortable. Design your environment. Remove the need for willpower by creating routines that make starting automatic. Focus on the mechanical start. Break the inertia by focusing only on the first 5 minutes. Live by standards, not goals. Define who you are by what you do every day, not by what you hope to do one day. In the next chapter, we will discuss how to manage the heat of your emotions once you are in the thick of the work. But for now, your task is simple. Burn the bridge of motivation. There is no going back to waiting for the spark. From this moment on, you are a creature of systems. Repetition phrase, you don't wait to feel ready, you execute. Chapter 2. Master your emotional temperature. Part 1. The concept of the internal thermostat. In the world of high performance, intensity is often misunderstood as being loud. People envision a coach screaming on the sidelines, a trader shouting on the floor, or an entrepreneur slamming their fist on a desk. They mistake agitation for power. But in reality, that kind of intensity is fragile. It is high heat, but it is uncontrolled. It burns out quickly and leaves a trail of poor decisions in its wake. True controlled intensity is about your internal thermostat. Think of your emotions as a heating element. When the world puts pressure on you, when a deadline is missed, when a competitor moves into your space, or when a personal relationship becomes strained, your emotional temperature begins to rise. If you do not have a thermostat, your temperature will continue to climb until you reach a boiling point. At that point, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational part of your brain, shuts down. You become reactive. not proactive. You say things you regret, you make impulsive moves, and you lose your edge. To master controlled intensity, you must learn to keep your emotional temperature at a steady, cool level, regardless of how much heat the world is applying to the outside of your container. You are not cold because you lack passion. You are cool because you are in control. Part 2. Suppression versus regulation. A common mistake people make when trying to be disciplined is emotional suppression. They believe that to be a high performer, they must become a robot. They push their anger, fear, and frustration deep down into a basement and lock the door. This is a dangerous strategy. Emotions are energy. If you suppress them without processing them, they don't disappear, they compress. Like a pressure cooker with a blocked valve, eventually, the container will fail. Suppression leads to sudden outbursts, chronic stress, and physical burnout. Emotional regulation, however, is different. Regulation is the ability to acknowledge the emotion without letting it dictate your actions. If you feel a surge of anger during a negotiation, suppression says, "I am not angry." Regulation says, "I feel anger rising in my chest. I see it. I understand why it's there, but I will not let it change the tone of my voice or the logic of my argument." Controlled intensity is the blue flame. If you look at a fire, the orange and yellow sparks are the most visible, but the blue center is the hottest and most stable. That is where you want to live. You acknowledge the fire, but you focus it into a laser instead of a wildfire. Part 3. The gap between stimulus and response. There is a famous psychological principle often attributed to Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. For the average person, that space is non-existent. Something happens, stimulus, and they immediately react, response. Someone cuts them off in traffic. They honk. Someone insults them. They insult back. This is low-level living. It is a life lived in a state of constant reaction. The master of controlled intensity works every day to widen that gap. When a stimulus hits, a crisis at work, a stinging piece of criticism, they don't jump to respond. They pause. In that pause, they check their internal thermostat. They ask, "What is my temperature right now? Is it rising? How can I bring it back to the baseline?" High performers in high-stakes environments, special forces operators, trauma surgeons, elite quarterbacks, are masters of the high-performance pause. They use that split second to reset their nervous system before they make their move. They don't react to the chaos, they respond to the objective. Part 4. The method: observe, don't absorb. How do you actually widen that gap? How do you keep the temperature down when the world is on fire? You use the observe, don't absorb method. Imagine you are standing behind a thick sheet of reinforced glass. On the other side of that glass is a storm. There is wind, lightning, and torrential rain. You can see the storm. You can analyze its direction. You can see the damage it's doing. But you are not in the storm. You are not getting wet. You are not being blown away. Most people absorb the energy of their environment. If they walk into a room where people are stressed, they become stressed. If they deal with an angry client, they become angry. They are like sponges. A master of controlled intensity is like a mirror. You see the energy coming at you, but you don't let it inside. If a colleague is being irrational and aggressive, you observe it. You think to yourself, that person is currently experiencing a high emotional temperature. They are losing control. By labeling the behavior of others objectively, you detach yourself from it. You are observing the weather of the situation without letting it change your internal climate. This detachment is not a sign of coldness or lack of empathy. It is a sign of supreme competence. You cannot help a drowning person if you jump in and drown with them. You help them by staying on the boat and throwing a rope. Part 5. The physiology of calm. Your mind and body are a feedback loop. When your mind gets stressed, your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, and your muscles tense up. But this loop works both ways. If you manually force your body into a calm state, your mind will follow. To regulate your temperature under pressure, you must control your physical cues. The breath, The moment you feel heat rising, move to box breathing or tactical breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold. This sends a physical signal to your brain that there is no immediate life-threatening danger. It forcibly lowers your heart rate. The voice. Monitor your volume and speed. When people lose control, they speak faster and at a higher pitch. To regain control, consciously lower your volume and slow your cadence. This projects authority to others, but more importantly, it convinces your own brain that you are in command. The grip. Check your hands. Are your fists clenched? Is your jaw tight? Consciously relax your muscles. By managing these physical markers, you are hacking your nervous system. You are refusing to let the fight or flight response take over. You are keeping your intensity focused on the task, not on the survival instinct. Part 6. Leadership and the mirror effect. If you are in a position of leadership, whether you are a parent, a manager, or a coach, your emotional temperature determines the temperature of the entire room. This is the mirror effect. If the leader panics, the team panics. If the leader remains calm and focused, the team settles. The most intense leaders are often the quietest ones in a crisis. They don't need to yell because their presence is so grounded that it demands attention. Think of a pilot during extreme turbulence. If the pilot's voice over the intercom sounds shaky and panicked, the passengers will go into a frenzy. But if the pilot speaks with a slow, rhythmic, controlled tone, the passengers feel safe. The pilot may be working at a high level of intensity to keep the plane in the air, but their emotional temperature is low. Intensity is about the work you are doing. Calm is about how you feel while doing it. Never confuse the two. Part 7. Practical exercise, the social lab. To master this, you must treat your daily interactions as a laboratory. Don't wait for a major life crisis to practice observe, don't absorb. Practice it in the small things. When you are waiting in a long line and the person in front of you is being difficult with the cashier, observe, don't absorb. Watch the situation. Feel the annoyance rise in your body. Then, consciously lower your temperature. Use your breathing. Stay behind the glass. When you receive an email that feels like a personal attack, observe, don't absorb. Do not reply immediately. Wait for the high-performance pause. Let the heat dissipate. Then, respond with surgical precision, focusing only on the facts and the solution, not the insult. The more you practice this in low-stakes environments, the more it becomes your default setting. You are building a calm muscle. You are becoming the person who can stay frosty while everyone else is melting down. Part 8. The power of the cold flame. In the ancient world, the Stoics understood this better than anyone. They knew that we cannot control what happens to us, but we have total control over our judgment of what happens to us. Controlled intensity is the ultimate competitive advantage. While your competitors are burning energy on ego, anger, and anxiety, you are using every ounce of your energy for execution. You are not distracted by the noise. You are not swayed by the critics. You are a steady, relentless force. When you master your emotional temperature, you become an anchor. People will look to you when things go wrong. Opportunities will find you because you are a safe pair of hands. You will realize that the most powerful person in any room is the one who is the least reactive. Repetition phrase. Calm is not weakness, it's control. Summary of Chapter 2. Intensity is not about volume, it is about precision. To master your emotional temperature, differentiate between suppression and regulation. Don't hide your emotions, lead them. Widen the gap. Use the high-performance pause between a stimulus and your response. Use the observe, don't absorb method. Stay behind the glass and watch the storm without getting wet. Hack your physiology. Control your breath, your voice, and your tension to force your mind into a state of calm. Lead by example. Remember that your temperature dictates the climate of those around you. The flame of intensity must be blue. It must be steady. It must be controlled. In the next chapter, we will look at how to protect this flame by identifying and eliminating the energy leaks that are quietly draining your power. Chapter 3. Eliminate energy leaks. Part 1. The concept of the leaky bucket. Imagine you are standing in the middle of a desert, and you have a single bucket of water. This water is your life force. It is your focus, your creativity, your patience, and your ability to execute. This water is the only thing that will get you to the oasis on the horizon. Now, imagine that your bucket has 10 tiny, pin-sized holes in the bottom. At first, you don't notice the leaks. The water level seems fine. But as you walk, the constant drip, drip, drip begins to take its toll. By the time you are halfway to your goal, you look down and realize your bucket is half empty. You haven't even used the water yet. You haven't drunk from it to fuel your work, but the water is gone anyway. This is how most people live their lives. They wonder why they feel exhausted by 2 p.m. They wonder why they have no intensity left for their side hustle, their workout, or their family at the end of the day. They assume they need more caffeine, more sleep, or more motivation. But the problem isn't their intake, it's their output. They are leaking energy in places that provide zero return on investment. To master controlled intensity, you must become a plumber of your own soul. You must find the leaks, and you must plug them with ruthless efficiency. Part 2. The cognitive cost of open loops. The first and most dangerous energy leak is overthinking, specifically in the form of what psychologists call open loops. An open loop is any commitment, task, or idea that you have acknowledged but haven't resolved. Think of your brain like a computer's CPU. Every open loop is a background application running silently. You might think you're focusing on your main task, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking about that unanswered email, the bill you forgot to pay, the strange noise your car made this morning, and the awkward thing you said to a colleague 3 days ago. Each one of these loops pulls a small percentage of your processing power. When you have 50 loops running, your system slows down. You become indecisive. Your intensity drops because your energy is fragmented. Controlled intensity requires a single tasking brain. To plug this leak, you must close the loops. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. If it takes longer, write it down in a trusted system so your brain can delete the active file. Your brain is a tool for creating ideas, not for storing them. Every time you say, "I need to remember to do that," you are creating a leak. Write it down. Close the loop. Save the energy for the execution. Part 3. The calorie burn of unnecessary conflict. The second major leak is social and emotional friction. High performance requires an immense amount of caloric energy. Your brain, though it only weighs 2% of your body mass, consumes 20% of your daily calories. Engaging in an unnecessary argument is a massive drain on those calories. Ask yourself, how much energy do you spend winning imaginary arguments in the shower? How much energy do you spend ruminating on a negative comment someone left on your social media? How much energy do you spend trying to prove your worth to people who don't even matter to your long-term mission? In the world of controlled intensity, every interaction is an energy transaction. When you engage in a petty argument, you are choosing to spend your currency on something that has a negative interest rate. You win the argument, but you lose the day. You are left feeling agitated, your heart rate is up, and your focus is shattered. True intensity is silent. It doesn't need to defend itself. It doesn't need to have the last word. If a conflict does not move you closer to your objective, it is a leak. Plug it by walking away. Plug it by staying silent. Plug it by realizing that your peace of mind is more valuable than your ego's desire to be right. Part 4. The digital parasite. We cannot talk about energy leaks without addressing the black mirror in your pocket. Your smartphone is the most sophisticated energy extraction device ever invented. It is designed by thousands of engineers specifically to find the cracks in your attention and widen them. The leak here isn't just the time you spend scrolling, it's the switching cost. Research shows that every time you are distracted by a notification, it takes an average of 23 minutes to return to a state of deep work or flow. If you check your phone once every 15 minutes, you are never actually focused. You are living in a state of continuous partial attention. This is like trying to drive a car while slamming on the brakes every 100 yards. You are burning an incredible amount of fuel, but you aren't going anywhere. This fragmented intensity is exhausting. It leaves you feeling busy but unproductive. To plug the digital leak, you must create deep work sanctuaries. No notifications. No quick checks of the news. No dopamine hits from likes. You must treat your focus as a sacred resource. If you wouldn't let a stranger walk into your office and scream in your ear every 10 minutes, why do you let your phone do it? Part 5. Real-world scenario. The power of simplification. Consider the story of a high-level executive I once observed. He was successful by every metric, but he was on the verge of a heart attack. He was working 14-hour days, but his company's growth had plateaued. When we looked at his bucket, it wasn't just leaking, it was shattered. He was seasick on every minor email. He had an open door policy that meant he was interrupted every 6 minutes. He spent his evenings arguing with political strangers on Twitter. He was trying to be intense, but his intensity was being sprayed out in 1,000 directions like a broken sprinkler head. We performed an energy intervention. He stopped checking email until 11 a.m. He deleted his social media apps. He empowered his staff to make decisions without him, closing hundreds of loops that were cluttering his mind. Within 1 month, his productivity didn't just increase, it doubled. But more importantly, his intensity returned. Because he was no longer leaking energy on the trivial, he could apply 100% of his power to the vital. He went from being a busy manager to being a formidable leader. He realized that saying no to the leaks was the same as saying yes to his greatness. Part 6. Visualizing the energy audit. I want you to pause and conduct a mental energy audit right now. Visualize your typical day from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. The morning leak. Do you reach for your phone within 60 seconds of waking up? If so, you have started your day by reacting to the world's agenda. You have leaked your first and best energy of the day. The decision leak. Are you wasting energy on things that should be automated? What to wear, what to eat, what time to start work. Every small decision is a leak. The people leak. Who in your life drains you? There are energy radiators and energy vampires. If you spend your lunch hour listening to a coworker complain, you are handing them your bucket and letting them pour it down the drain. The evening leak. How do you wind down? Is it through doom scrolling or mindless TV? This is not recovery. It's a slow leak that prevents deep sleep. Write down the 3 biggest holes in your bucket. Maybe it's a specific person, a specific habit, or a specific app. Now, imagine yourself plugging those holes. Imagine the feeling of the water level rising. That feeling of fullness is the foundation of controlled intensity. Part 7. Guarding your currency. You must begin to view your energy as currency. If I asked you to give me $500 for no reason, you would say no. Yet, you give away $500 worth of focus to a random YouTube video or a petty office drama without a second thought. Controlled intensity is a form of financial discipline for the mind. You must be stingy with your energy. You must ask, is this interaction worth the calorie burn? Is this thought loop worth the cognitive load? Does this app deserve my attention? When you guard your energy like it's currency, your behavior changes. You become more selective. You become more intense in your focus because you have a larger reservoir to draw from. You stop being available to everyone and everything, and you start being present for the things that matter. Part 8. The standard of the void. There is a certain power in the void, the spaces in your day where nothing is happening. Most people are terrified of the void. They fill every second of silence with a podcast, a scroll, or a conversation. They are terrified of being alone with their thoughts because their thoughts are full of open loops. A master of controlled intensity embraces the void. They use the silence to recharge the battery. They understand that sometimes the most intense thing you can do is sit in a chair for 10 minutes and do absolutely nothing. This allows the mental silt to settle and the water to become clear. By eliminating the leaks, you create a surplus. That surplus is what allows you to be relentless when it's time to work. You aren't faster or smarter than your competition. You just have more fuel in your tank because you refuse to let it leak away on the journey. Summary of Chapter 3. Intensity is not just about how hard you work, it's about how much energy you retain. To eliminate your leaks, close your open loops. Write it down or do it now. Don't let tasks live in your active memory. Avoid negative interest conflicts. If it doesn't serve the mission, stay silent. Audit your digital life. High-intensity focus requires a no-notification environment. View energy as currency. Be stingy with who and what gets your attention. Embrace the void. Use silence to settle your mind and prepare for the next burst of intensity. Repetition phrase. Guard your energy like it's currency. Chapter 4. Build ruthless focus rituals. Part 1. Focus is not a gift. We often look at the world's most productive people, the authors who churn out bestsellers every year, the programmers who build empires from lines of code, the athletes who remain locked in during the final seconds of a championship, and we assume they possess a biological gift. We call it the ability to focus, as if it's a personality trait like being tall or having blue eyes. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of how the human brain works. Focus is not a gift. It is a conditioned response. It is a muscle that must be trained, and more importantly, it is a state of being that must be triggered. If you sit down at your desk and wait for focus to arrive, you are back in the trap of Chapter 1, relying on a feeling. Controlled intensity requires you to stop waiting for focus and start commanding it. You do this through rituals. A ritual is a bridge. It is a sequence of actions that moves you from the distracted, noisy world of the everyday into the silent, high-pressure world of deep work. Part 2. The Pavlovian Brain. To understand why rituals work, we have to look at classical conditioning. You are likely familiar with Pavlov's dogs, the experiment where a bell was rung every time the dogs were fed. Eventually, the dogs began to salivate at the mere sound of the bell, even when no food was present. Their nervous systems had been primed. Your brain is no different. If you spend your day reacting to notifications, jumping from task to task, and scrolling through news feeds, you are conditioning your brain for distraction. You are ringing the bell of chaos. A focus ritual is your way of ringing a different bell. It is a signal to your subconscious that says, the time for playing is over. The time for reacting is over. We are now entering the zone of intensity. When you repeat a specific ritual every single time you begin work, your brain eventually forms a neurological shortcut. After enough repetition, the moment you begin the ritual, your brain starts releasing the neurochemicals associated with concentration, noradrenaline and acetylcholine, before you've even started the task. Part 3. The Rituals of Greatness. Look at the most intense performers in history, and you will find rituals that border on the obsessive. Consider the tennis legend Rafael Nadal. Before every match, and even before every serve, he goes through a hyperspecific sequence. He places his water bottles in a specific spot, labels facing a specific way. He adjusts his hair, his clothing, and his position in a way that never changes. To an outsider, it looks like superstition. To Nadal, it is a way to quiet the noise of the stadium and find his internal center. The ritual tells his body, we have been here before. We know what to do. Consider the great writers. Maya Angelou would rent a tiny hotel room, remove all the pictures from the walls, and sit on the bed with a bottle of sherry and a deck of cards to play solitaire until the words came. Stephen King sits at the same desk every morning at 8 a.m., drinks a glass of water or a cup of tea, takes his vitamin, and plays the same music. These people aren't being weird for the sake of it. They are using environmental and physical cues to hack their own psychology. They are creating a container for their intensity. They know that the ritual is the handle that allows them to pick up the heavy weight of focus. Part 4. The Invisible Architect, Environmental Design. Most people rely on willpower to stay focused. They sit in a messy room, with their phone buzzing next to them, and tell themselves, I just need to try harder to concentrate. Willpower is a finite resource. It is like a battery that drains every time you have to resist a temptation. If you are using your willpower to ignore your phone, you have less willpower left to do your work. This is an energy leak. Controlled intensity requires you to become the invisible architect of your environment. You don't fight the environment. You design it so that focus is the path of least resistance. If you want to be intensely focused, your workspace must be a sacred space. It should be associated with only one thing, execution. If you work on your laptop in bed, your brain is confused. Is it time to sleep or time to work? If you work at the kitchen table where you eat and socialize, your brain is primed for conversation and consumption. Design your cues. Maybe you have a specific lamp that you only turn on when it's time for deep work. Maybe you wear a specific pair of work-only headphones. When that lamp is on or those headphones are on, your brain knows there is no other option but intensity. You are controlling the cues so you don't have to rely on the willpower. Part 5. The 3 pillars of a focus ritual. A truly ruthless focus ritual addresses 3 layers of your being: the physical, the sensory, and the mental. To build your own 15-minute bridge into intensity, you should incorporate elements of all 3. 1. The physical pillar, the body. Movement signals a shift in state. It could be as simple as clearing your desk of any clutter from the previous day. This clearing of the temple prepares the mind. It could be a specific stretching routine or a 5-minute walk. By moving your body in a consistent way, you are shaking off the lethargy of the outside world. 2. The sensory pillar, the inputs. Your senses are the fastest way to trigger a neurological state. Sound. Many high performers use brown noise, white noise, or binaural beats to drown out the world. Others use a specific focus playlist that they listen to only during deep work. Scent. The olfactory bulb is directly connected to the brain's memory centers. If you light a specific candle or use a specific essential oil only when you work, that scent will eventually become a focus trigger. Sight. This is where environmental design comes in. Minimalize your visual field. If it doesn't help the task, it shouldn't be in your line of sight. 3. The mental pillar, the intent. Before you start, you must define the win. Most people fail at focus because they don't know exactly what they are focusing on. They have a vague goal like working on my project. A ruthless ritual ends with a single sentence of intent. In the next 90 minutes, I will complete the first draft of the executive summary. By narrowing the target, you allow your intensity to become a laser rather than a floodlight. Part 6. Transitioning out, the shutdown ritual. Focus is not just about how you start, it's about how you stop. If you work until you are exhausted and then just collapse into your personal life, the residue of your work will follow you. You'll be at dinner with your family, but your mind will still be in the spreadsheet. This is another energy leak. Controlled intensity requires a shutdown ritual. This is a 5-minute process at the end of your work block where you review what you did, write down the first move for tomorrow, and then literally say the words, "Work is complete." This creates a psychological boundary. It allows you to fully detach, which we will discuss in Chapter 9, so that your recovery is as intense as your work. You are training your brain that focus has a beginning and an end. When the ritual is over, the intensity is put back in its cage. Part 7. The first 10 minutes rule. Even with a perfect ritual, you will still encounter the resistance. This is the voice in your head that tells you the work is too hard, or that you should check the news just for a second. The secret of ruthless focus is the first 10 minutes rule. Tell yourself, I don't have to be intense for 4 hours. I only have to be intense for the first 10 minutes. Psychologically, once we enter a task, we develop cognitive ease. The friction disappears. The ritual gets you to the desk. The first 10 minutes gets you into the flow. Most people quit at minute 3. The master of controlled intensity knows that those first 10 minutes are a tunnel of fire you have to walk through to get to the cool room of deep focus on the other side. Part 8. Training the muscle. You wouldn't walk into a gym and try to bench press 400 pounds on your first day. Yet, people who haven't focused for more than 10 minutes in years expect themselves to sit down and do 4 hours of deep work. Focus is a muscle. If you can only focus for 20 minutes right now, that is your baseline. Do 20 minutes with absolute, ruthless intensity. Then, take a deliberate recovery break. Next week, try for 25. Intensity is not about how long you work, it's about the density of your work. 1 hour of controlled intensity focus, where the phone is gone, the ritual has been performed, and the intent is clear, is worth 10 hours of distracted work where you are checking your email every few minutes. Part 9. Practical application. Creating your ritual. I want you to design your bridge into intensity right now. It should take no more than 10 to 15 minutes. Clear the space. Spend 2 minutes removing any visual distractions from your desk. Sensory trigger. Put on your work-only headphones or start your specific playlist. Hydrate and prime. Drink a glass of water and take 3 deep, tactical breaths. Define the mission. Write down exactly 1 task you will complete. The point of no return. Put your phone in another room or turn it off. Once this sequence is complete, you are no longer a person trying to work. You are a professional in a state of controlled intensity. Summary of Chapter 4. Focus is not something you find in the moment. It is something you build through preparation. To master ruthless focus, stop relying on willpower. Use rituals to trigger your brain's work mode automatically. Mimic the masters. Use physical cues like Nadal or environmental triggers like King to signal the start of intensity. Become the invisible architect. Design your environment so that distraction is difficult and focus is easy. Address the 3 pillars. Your ritual must involve your body, your senses, and your mental intent. Protect the boundaries. Use a shutdown ritual to ensure your work intensity doesn't bleed into your rest. Focus is the price of admission for greatness. If you cannot control your attention, you cannot control your life. Repetition phrase. Focus is trained, not found. Chapter 5. Detach from immediate results. Part 1. The curse of the mirror. We live in the era of the instant. We have instant messaging, instant streaming, and instant food. This cultural environment has rewired our brains to expect an immediate feedback loop for every action we take. If we post a photo, we expect likes within seconds. If we send a text, we expect a reply within minutes. When this instant mindset bleeds into our work and our personal growth, it becomes a poison. It kills intensity. Think about the person who decides to get in shape. They go to the gym on Monday. They work out with incredible intensity for 2 hours. They sweat, they push themselves, and they come home exhausted. They walk straight to the bathroom, strip off their shirt, and look in the mirror. And what do they see? Nothing. They look exactly the same as they did 3 hours ago. On Tuesday, they go back. They push even harder. They eat a salad for lunch. They come home and look in the mirror again. Still nothing. By Thursday, the intensity begins to fade. By the following Monday, they've quit. They say, "This isn't working." They quit not because they lacked intensity, but because they were attached to the immediate result. They expected the mirror to reflect their effort in real time. But greatness doesn't work on a real-time feedback loop. It works on a delay. Controlled intensity is the ability to maintain your fire during that delay. Part 2. The trap of the intensity spike. Most people operate in intensity spikes. They have a big idea, and for 72 hours, they are the most productive people on earth. They stay up all night, they talk about nothing else, and they burn through a month's worth of energy in 3 days. Then, the silence hits. The silence is that period where you are doing the work, but the world isn't noticing yet. There are no sales. There are no compliments. There is no visible progress. Because their intensity was fueled by the expectation of a quick win, as soon as that win doesn't materialize, their energy crashes. They fall into a deep valley of lethargy until the next big idea comes along. This cycle is exhausting and unproductive. It is the hallmark of the amateur. The professional understands that long-term consistency beats short-term intensity spikes every single time. Controlled intensity isn't about how much you can do in a day. It's about how much you can maintain over a decade. It's about the slow burn. The professional knows that the result is a lagging indicator of the work. If you are looking at the result to find the motivation to do the work, you are looking in the wrong direction. Part 3. The sustainable build, a business case. Consider the difference between 2 types of businesses. The first is the trend chaser. They see a fad, maybe it's a specific cryptocurrency, a viral product, or a social media gimmick, and they throw all their intensity into it. They grow 500% in a month. They look successful. But because they built their intensity on a foundation of immediate results, they didn't build infrastructure. When the trend shifts or the results slow down, the company collapses just as fast as it rose. The second is the sustainable titan. Think of a company like Amazon in its early years. For years, Jeff Bezos told investors that the company wouldn't be profitable. He was pouring every cent back into the infrastructure, the logistics, and the systems. To the outside world, it looked like a failure. The results weren't there. But the intensity was there. It was just directed at the process, not the profit. By detaching from the immediate need for a win, they built a foundation that eventually became an unstoppable force. When you detach from results, you gain the freedom to do things the right way, rather than the fast way. You build for longevity. You build for dominance. Part 4. The biology of delayed gratification. Why is this so hard for us? It's because of the battle between two parts of your brain, the striatum and the prefrontal cortex. The striatum is the ancient part of your brain. It is the reward center. It wants the sugar now. It wants the sex now. It wants the like now. It is short-sighted and impulsive. When you don't get an immediate reward for your effort, the striatum sends out signals of frustration and boredom. It tries to get you to quit. The prefrontal cortex is the CEO of your brain. It is the part that understands time, logic, and long-term consequences. It is the part that knows that the workout today pays off in 6 months. Controlled intensity is the process of the prefrontal cortex taking the leash of the striatum. You must train yourself to find the reward in the execution itself, rather than the outcome. You have to learn to love the clank of the weights, not just the muscle in the mirror. You have to learn to love the clack of the keyboard, not just the book on the shelf. When the process becomes the reward, you are no longer at the mercy of the results. You become resilient. You become the unstoppable. Part 5. The Chinese bamboo analogy. There is a famous analogy in the world of high performance, the Chinese bamboo tree. When you plant the seed of a Chinese bamboo tree, you have to water it and fertilize it every single day. For the first year, nothing happens. No green shoots. No leaves. You continue to water it for the second year. Still nothing. The third year, the fourth year, nothing. If you were looking for immediate results, you would have quit by month 3. You would have assumed the seed was dead. But then, in the 5th year, something miraculous happens. In a period of just 6 weeks, the Chinese bamboo tree grows 80 feet tall. Did it grow 80 feet in 6 weeks? No. It grew 80 feet in 5 years. During those 4 years of nothing, the tree was growing a massive, complex root system beneath the surface. Without those years of invisible growth, the tree could never support the weight of its visible success. Your life is the same. Your intensity during the quiet years, when nobody is watching, when the money isn't coming in, when the scale isn't moving, is what builds your root system. Detaching from the results allows you to focus on the roots. Part 6. Redefining the scoreboard. If you want to maintain controlled intensity, you need to change how you keep score. Most people use an external scoreboard. They look at their bank account, their followers, or their titles. The problem with an external scoreboard is that you don't have total control over it. You can do everything right and still have a bad quarter because the market shifted. If your intensity is tied to that scoreboard, your intensity will fluctuate with the market. The master of controlled intensity uses an internal scoreboard. Your internal scoreboard only has one metric. Did I execute the system today with the required intensity? Did I hit my word count? Yes, no. Did I complete my training session? Yes, no. Did I stick to my emotional regulation protocol? Yes, no. If the answer is yes, you have won the day. You celebrate the yes regardless of what happened in the outside world. By focusing on lead measures, the things you control, rather than lag measures, the results, you maintain a steady, high-intensity output. You stop riding the emotional roller coaster of ups and downs and start walking the steady path of the professional. Part 7. The resilience factor. Detachment from results is the ultimate shield against failure. When you are attached to the result, failure is an identity. If the business fails, you are a failure. If the book doesn't sell, you are a bad writer. This makes you fragile. It makes you hesitant to take risks and slow to recover from setbacks. But when you are committed to the process, failure is just data. It's a signal that the process needs an adjustment, not that you need a new identity. A scientist in a lab doesn't cry when an experiment fails. They say, "Interesting. That combination didn't work. Let's try the next one." That is controlled intensity. It is a clinical, objective approach to growth. You keep your intensity focused on the next experiment, regardless of how the last one turned out. This resilience allows you to stay in the game longer than anyone else. And in the end, the person who stays in the game the longest usually wins. Part 8. Practical application. Tracking inputs. I want you to change your tracking method for the next 30 days. If you are trying to lose weight, stop stepping on the scale every morning. Instead, track how many days you hit your protein goal and your step count. If you are trying to grow a business, stop checking your Stripe account every hour. Instead, track how many reach-outs or sales calls you made. Create a process calendar. Every day you execute your system with controlled intensity, put a red X through that day. Your only goal is to not break the chain. When you stop looking for the fruit and start focusing on the plowing, you will find that the fruit eventually takes care of itself. The irony of controlled intensity is that the less you obsess over the results, the better the results actually become. Because you are no longer distracted by their applause, you can dedicate 100% of your energy to the performance. Part 9. The silence of dominance. There is a quiet dignity in the person who can work for months without recognition. This is the darkroom phase. In photography, the film must be developed in a darkroom. If you let the light in too early, the image is ruined. Your greatness is being developed in the dark. If you chase the light of applause or validation too early, you ruin the process. You become a performer instead of a producer. Controlled intensity requires you to be okay with being unseen for a while. It requires you to be okay with people thinking you are just okay while you are secretly building an empire. Stay in the darkroom. Trust the root system. Do the work because the work is who you are, not because of what it will get you. Summary of Chapter 5. To master controlled intensity, you must detach from the immediate and attach to the eternal. Beware the mirror trap. Don't expect today's effort to show up in today's results. Trade spikes for consistency. It is better to be 80% intense for a year than 100% intense for a week. Understand your biology. Use your prefrontal cortex to override the striatum's demand for a hit of success. Keep an internal scoreboard. Measure yourself by your actions, not your outcomes. Embrace the darkroom. Build your roots in silence so your growth can be sustainable. The world is full of people who want the prize. Be the person who wants the process. When you fall in love with the grind, the world will eventually fall in love with your results. Repetition phrase. Stay committed to the process, not the applause. Chapter 6. Speak less, execute more. Part 1. The era of the announcement. We live in an age of noise. We live in a world where the announcement has become more important than the achievement. We see it every day on social media, the coming soon posts, the hustle selfies, the public declarations of New Year's resolutions, and the constant broadcast of every minor milestone. People feel a desperate need to be seen doing the work, rather than just doing the work. They want the credit before they've paid the price. They want the title before they've performed the task. In the philosophy of controlled intensity, this is a fatal error. Every time you speak about what you are going to do, you are leaking the very energy you need to actually do it. There is a direct, inverse relationship between how much a person talks about their goals and how likely they are to achieve them. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one shouting about their plans. It's the one sitting quietly in the corner, already executing them. Part 2. The social reality trap. Why do we feel this overwhelming urge to tell everyone our plans? It's not just a personality flaw, it's a neurological trap. Psychologists call it social reality. When you have a goal, there is a natural tension in your brain, a gap between where you are and where you want to be. This tension is a form of controlled intensity. It is the fuel that drives you to take action to close the gap. However, when you tell someone about your goal and they acknowledge it, perhaps they say, "That's amazing," or "You're going to be so successful." Your brain receives a hit of social validation. Because the brain is a social organ, it struggles to distinguish between social praise for an intention and the satisfaction of an achievement. The praise tricks your brain into feeling like you've already reached the finish line. The tension evaporates. The gap feels closed. Consequently, your motivation to do the actual, grueling work drops significantly. You've already received the psychological reward without doing the physical labor. You've spent your intensity currency on a conversation instead of a conquest. Part 3. Performative productivity. This leads us to a modern epidemic. Performative productivity. This is the act of looking busy to satisfy an audience, rather than being productive to satisfy a standard. Think of the student who spends 3 hours color-coding their planner and taking a perfect photo of their coffee and textbooks for Instagram, but only spends 20 minutes actually studying. Think of the entrepreneur who spends all their time networking and building their brand on LinkedIn but hasn't made a single sales call in a month. Performative productivity is a massive energy leak. It is thin intensity. It is a flickering candle that looks bright but provides no heat. When you are performative, your focus is external. You are constantly checking the mirror of public opinion. Controlled intensity, however, is internally focused. It is about the integrity of the work when the cameras are off and the room is empty. The master of controlled intensity doesn't care if the world knows they are working. They only care that the work is getting done to their non-negotiable standard. Part 4. The mystery of authority. There is a psychological power in silence that most people overlook. Silence creates a vacuum, and the human brain is naturally drawn to fill that vacuum with respect and curiosity. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you are the person who doesn't boast, who doesn't complain, and who doesn't feel the need to explain every move, you project an aura of self-contained power. You appear as someone who has an internal source of validation. You don't need the world to tell you that you're doing a good job. You already know. Consider the quiet performer in an office or a gym. They arrive on time, they do their work with surgical precision, they don't engage in office gossip, and they leave. They don't announce their wins. But when the results are posted, when the sales numbers come in or the physical transformation becomes undeniable, everyone notices. Because they didn't talk about it, the result hits the audience with 100% impact. If they had been talking about it for months, the result would be expected and stale. Silence preserves the shock and awe of your success. Part 5. Conservation of verbal energy. Talking is an aerobic activity for the brain. It requires cognitive load, emotional energy, and physical effort. If you spend 2 hours at lunch talking about your vision, you are literally exhausting the mental resources you need to build that vision in the afternoon. Controlled intensity is about the conservation of energy. Every word you speak is a withdrawal from your intensity account. Is that withdrawal buying you anything of value? If you are explaining your process to someone who doesn't need to know, you are wasting funds. If you are defending yourself against a critic who has no influence over your life, you are wasting funds. The silent operator treats their words like high-value ammunition. They don't spray bullets into the air just to hear the noise. They wait until they have a clear target, and then they fire with precision. By speaking less, they have more breath left for the climb. Part 6. The vaporware problem. In the tech world, there is a term called vaporware. It refers to software or hardware that is announced with great fanfare, advertised for months, but never actually released. It exists only in the vapor of talk. Many people's lives are vaporware. They have a library of vapor goals. I'm writing a book. Vapor. I'm starting a podcast. Vapor. I'm going to transform my diet. Vapor. Every time you announce a goal without executing it, you damage your self-trust. Your subconscious mind hears you making these declarations and notices that nothing ever happens. Over time, you lose faith in your own word. Your intensity becomes hollow because you know, deep down, that you are just making noise. To regain your power, you must adopt a results-first policy. You don't talk about the book until the first draft is finished. You don't talk about the business until you have your first paying customer. You don't talk about the gym until your clothes don't fit anymore. Let the physical reality of your progress be the only announcement you ever make. Part 7. Handling inquiries, the stealth response. So, how do you handle it when people ask what you're up to? You don't want to be rude or socially awkward, but you also don't want to leak energy. The master of controlled intensity uses the stealth response. When someone asks, "What have you been working on lately?" you give a low-resolution answer. You don't give them the details, the vision, or the timeline. You say, "Just keeping my head down and focusing on the basics. Working on some internal projects. I'll let you know when they're ready." Just staying consistent with the routine. These answers satisfy the social requirement without releasing the pressure of your goals. They keep the tension inside the system. By being vague, you protect your dark room, as discussed in Chapter 5, and keep your intensity focused where it belongs, on the execution. Part 8. The surprise factor as a competitive edge. In any competitive environment, business, sports, or even personal growth, the element of surprise is a force multiplier. If your competition knows exactly what you're doing because you're broadcasting it on social media, they can adjust. They can counter-move. They can mentally prepare for your arrival. But if you are silent, if you are ghosting the world while you build, you become a ghost in the machine. You move faster because you are unburdened by public expectation. And when you finally launch or reveal your work, you do so with a level of quality that seems impossible to those who didn't see you coming. The surprise factor creates a psychological advantage. It makes people wonder, where did they find the time? How did they do this so fast? The answer is simple. You didn't spend your time talking about it. You used the talking time for doing time. Part 9. Building internal authority. The ultimate reason to speak less and execute more is to build internal authority. When you work in silence, you are proving to yourself that you don't need an audience to be great. You are proving that your standards are yours alone. This builds a core of steel. When you eventually do achieve success and the world starts clapping, the applause won't go to your head because you've already been doing the work for months without it. Internal authority is the foundation of true intensity. It means you are the captain of your own ship. You aren't swayed by the likes and you aren't crushed by the dislikes. You are a producer, not a performer. Part 10. Practical exercise, the quiet week. I want to challenge you to a quiet week. For the next 7 days, follow these 3 rules. 0 goal talk. Do not mention a single plan, goal, or vision to anyone. Not your friends, not your family, and definitely not social media. 0 work selfies. Do not take a photo of your desk, your gym workout, or your grind. Do the work in total anonymity. The 24-hour rule. If you achieve a win, a big sale, a new personal best, a finished chapter, wait 24 hours before telling a single person. Feel the heat of that success and keep it inside. Use that heat to fuel the next task. During this week, pay attention to your energy levels. You will likely find that you are more focused, less anxious, and more intense in your actual output. You will realize that the need to tell was just a leak. Once you plug it, the pressure builds, and that pressure is what turns coal into diamonds. Summary of Chapter 6. Words are cheap. Execution is expensive. To master the art of silence. Recognize the social reality trap. Praise for an intention kills the drive for execution. Kill performative productivity. Stop trying to look busy and start being effective. Use the vacuum of silence to build authority. Quiet people are perceived as more powerful. Conserve your verbal energy. Treat every word as a withdrawal from your focus account. Let the results be your introduction. If the work is good enough, it doesn't need an explanation. In a world that won't stop talking, your silence is your superpower. Your results will be so loud that you'll never have to raise your voice. Repetition phrase. Let your work introduce you. Chapter 7. Train your stress response. Part 1. The neutrality of the storm. In our modern culture, stress has become a dirty word. We are told to avoid it at all costs. We are encouraged to find stress-free jobs, stress-free relationships, and stress-free lifestyles. We treat stress as if it were a toxin or a disease that we must vaccinate ourselves against. But here is the truth that the masters of controlled intensity understand. Stress is neutral. Stress is nothing more than a biological signal that the demands of your environment have increased. It is energy. It is a surge of hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine, designed to prepare your system for a challenge. Whether that energy becomes a panic attack that paralyzes you or a performance peak that makes you unstoppable depends entirely on one thing: your interpretation. Think of stress like wind. To a person trying to walk against it with an umbrella, the wind is a nuisance. To a sailor with a well-built ship and a focused mind, that same wind is the very thing that propels them toward their destination. The wind doesn't care about your goals. It just blows. Your job is not to wish for a calm sea. Your job is to learn how to set your sails. Part 2. The two faces of adrenaline. When your heart starts pounding, your palms get sweaty, and your breathing becomes shallow, your body is entering a state of high arousal. In psychology, there are two primary ways to categorize this state: threat appraisal and challenge appraisal. When you view a situation as a threat, your brain perceives that the demands are greater than your resources. You feel like you are being hunted. Your blood vessels constrict, your focus narrows to the point of tunnel vision, and your creative thinking shuts down. This is uncontrolled intensity. This is where you choke under pressure. However, when you view that same situation as a challenge, your brain perceives that you have the resources, or the ability to develop the resources, to meet the demand. In a challenge state, your blood vessels actually dilate to allow more oxygen to reach your muscles and brain. Your heart rate is still high, but your focus is sharp and expansive. You feel on, ready, and dangerous. Controlled intensity is the skill of intentionally shifting from a threat appraisal to a challenge appraisal. It is the ability to look at the pounding of your own heart and say, "My body is powering up to help me win," instead of saying, "I'm losing control." Part 3. Stress inoculation, the microdose of difficulty. You cannot learn to handle high-level stress by reading about it. You cannot think your way out of a panic response in the middle of a crisis if you have spent your entire life in a state of comfort. You must train your stress response the same way you train a muscle, through stress inoculation. In medicine, a vaccine introduces a weakened version of a virus so the body can learn to fight the real thing. In performance, stress inoculation is the practice of microdosing discomfort. You must deliberately seek out situations that trigger your stress response in a controlled environment. This is why elite performers often have rituals of voluntary hardship. Why take a 3-minute cold shower every morning? It isn't just about the physical health benefits. It is about the psychological training. When you stand in front of that freezing water, your threat brain screams at you to stop. By stepping in anyway and forcing yourself to breathe calmly while the water hits your skin, you are teaching your nervous system that you can be stressed and controlled at the same time. You are training your calm muscle. If you can stay frosty in a 40-degree shower, you are more likely to stay frosty when a client screams at you or a deadline is moved up by 3 days. You are building a history of staying in command under fire. Part 4. Pressure reveals preparation. There is a common saying in the military: you do not rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training. When the pressure hits, you will not suddenly become a hero. You will not suddenly find focus that you haven't practiced. Pressure acts as a spotlight. It reveals the cracks in your foundation. If you have been faking your intensity, if you have been relying on motivation and easy wins, the pressure will shatter you. But if you have been training your stress response, pressure becomes your greatest ally. Consider a high-level athlete like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant. In the final seconds of a championship game, the pressure is immense. The crowd is screaming, the lights are blinding, and the stakes are millions of dollars and a legacy. For most people, that pressure would cause their muscles to tighten and their aim to fail. But for the trained performer, that pressure is a signal to enter a flow state. Because they have shot that same basketball 10,000 times in empty gyms while they were tired, sore, and bored, their body knows what to do. The pressure simply removes the distractions. Pressure doesn't create character, it reveals it. If you find yourself folding under pressure, don't blame the situation. Look at your preparation. Did you train for the worst-case scenario? Or did you only practice when things were easy? Part 5. The hard room philosophy. To master your stress response, you must create a hard room in your life. This is a time or place where you intentionally increase the difficulty of your tasks beyond what is necessary. If you are a public speaker, practice your speech while someone is intentionally trying to distract you. If you are a coder, try to solve a complex problem with a loud, ticking clock next to you. If you are an athlete, train in the worst possible weather. The goal of the hard room is to make the real world feel easy by comparison. If you have trained in the dark, the light doesn't scare you. If you have practiced with a heavy pack, you feel like you can fly when it's removed. Controlled intensity is about overlearning. You want your baseline level of competence to be so high that even when you lose 30% of your cognitive ability due to stress, you are still better than everyone else on their best day. You train for the 100-year storm, so the 10-year storm feels like a breeze. Part 6. Reframing anxiety as excitement. Physiologically, anxiety and excitement are nearly identical. Both involve a racing heart, butterflies in the stomach, and a heightened state of awareness. The only difference is the label you give them. Harvard researchers conducted a study where they asked participants to give a public speech. One group was told to say, "I am calm." The other group was told to say, "I am excited." The "I am calm" group performed poorly. They were trying to fight their biology, which is a losing battle. But the "I am excited" group performed significantly better. They weren't trying to lower their arousal, they were simply rebranding it. When you feel that surge of energy before a big event, don't tell yourself to relax. Relaxing is for the beach. Intensity is for the arena. Instead, say to yourself, "This is it. My body is preparing me. I am ready. I am dangerous." By reframing the stress as excitement, you move from a threat mindset to a challenge mindset. You welcome the energy instead of fearing it. You use the adrenaline to sharpen your vision and quicken your reflexes. Part 7. The tactical reset. Even with great training, there will be moments when the stress becomes overwhelming, when the heat gets too high. In these moments, you need a tactical reset. The fastest way to change your brain state is through your physiology. Specifically, the physiological sigh. This is a technique used by the brain to naturally offload carbon dioxide and lower heart rate. You take a deep inhale through your nose, followed by a second micro-inhale at the very top to fully expand the lungs, and then a long, slow exhale through your mouth. Doing this 2 or 3 times acts as a physical override for your nervous system. It forces your heart rate to drop. It tells your amygdala that you are not being eaten by a tiger. Combine this with a physical anchor. A physical anchor is a small movement, like pressing your thumb and forefinger together or adjusting your watch, that you associate with the words controlled intensity. In the middle of the chaos, you perform the sigh, you hit the anchor, and you reset your internal thermostat. You return to the blue flame. Part 8. Seeing pressure as a privilege. The final stage of training your stress response is a philosophical one. You must learn to view pressure as a privilege. Why do you have stress? Usually, it's because you are doing something that matters. You have stress because you have a business you care about. You have stress because you have a family you want to provide for. You have stress because you have a goal that is actually worth achieving. The person who has zero stress is usually the person who is doing nothing of significance. They are sitting on the sidelines of life, safe and comfortable, but totally stagnant. Controlled intensity is the price of admission for a life of impact. The fact that you feel the weight on your shoulders means you are in the game. It means you are a player, not a spectator. When the pressure feels heavy, take a moment to be grateful for it. It means you have been given the opportunity to do something great. It means you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Part 9. Practical drill, the stress load protocol. For the next 14 days, I want you to practice a stress load protocol to train your response. Morning inoculation. Take a cold shower for at least 60 seconds. Focus on keeping your breathing slow and rhythmic. Do not gasp or tense your muscles. Stay in control. The hard minute. Once a day, set a timer for 60 seconds and do something that makes you uncomfortable. Send that scary email, make the difficult phone call, or do a high-intensity physical exercise. Observe your heart rate and use the physiological sigh immediately afterward. The label shift. Every time you feel nervous today, stop and say out loud, I am excited. My body is preparing me for a challenge. Summary of Chapter 7. Stress is not a sign of weakness. It is a source of power that requires a harness. To train your response. Shift from threat to challenge. View the physical symptoms of stress as your body powering up. Practice stress inoculation. Use small, voluntary hardships to build your calm muscle. Embrace the hard room. Train in conditions that are more difficult than the actual event. Rebrand anxiety. Stop trying to be calm and start being excited. Use the tactical reset. Master the physiological sigh to override your nervous system when the heat gets too high. Recognize pressure as a privilege. It is the evidence that you are doing something that matters. When you stop running from the storm and start learning to sail, you realize that the wind was never your enemy. It was your engine. Repetition phrase. Pressure reveals preparation. Chapter 8. Create Non-Negotiable Standards Part 1. The Architecture of the Floor. We are often told to reach for the stars or to set BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. We are encouraged to visualize the mountain peak, the trophy, the bank account, and the accolades. We spend our lives looking up at our goals. But in the world of controlled intensity, your goals are largely irrelevant. Your goals represent your desires, and desires are fickle. They change based on your mood, your energy levels, and the weather. On a sunny Monday, your goal is to conquer the world. On a rainy Thursday when you've had 4 hours of sleep, your goal is simply to survive the afternoon. Controlled intensity is not built on your ceiling, the best you can do on your best day. It is built on your floor, the absolute minimum you are willing to accept from yourself on your worst day. This floor is what we call a standard. A goal is a destination you hope to reach. A standard is a baseline you refuse to drop below. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your standards. If your standard for physical health is I never miss a workout, no matter what, then your fitness is guaranteed. If your standard is I try to work out when I have time, then your fitness is a roll of the dice. To be truly intense, you must stop trying and start being. You must move from the world of goals into the world of non-negotiable standards. Part 2. The End of Internal Negotiation. The greatest thief of human energy is the internal debate. Imagine you wake up at 5:30 a.m. It's cold outside. Your bed is warm. The debate begins. Voice A. We should get up and go to the gym. We said we would. Voice B. But we're so tired. 1 more hour of sleep will actually make us more productive later. We can just go tomorrow. Voice A. But we missed yesterday too. This negotiation is exhausting. It drains your willpower before your feet even touch the floor. By the time you finally decide to get up, or decide to stay in bed, you have already leaked a massive amount of cognitive energy. You are starting your day in a state of decision fatigue. Controlled intensity is the process of killing the negotiation. When a behavior becomes a non-negotiable standard, the debate is over. There is no should I or will I. There is only I do. A vegetarian doesn't look at a steak and enter a 15-minute internal debate about whether they should eat it just this once. They don't eat it because it is a non-negotiable part of their identity. They have decided once, and therefore they never have to decide again. When you create a standard for your work ethic, your health, your honesty, or your focus, you are making a single, high-level decision that governs 1,000 future micro-decisions. You are saving your intensity for the execution, rather than wasting it on the deliberation. Part 3. Identity-based behavior. The secret to maintaining a standard without it feeling like a constant struggle is to tie it to your identity. Most people try to change their behavior from the outside in. They say, I want to be a person who writes every day. That is a goal. Because their internal identity is still I am a person who struggles with consistency, they eventually revert to their baseline. The master of controlled intensity works from the inside out. They say, I am a writer. Because they are a writer, the act of writing is no longer a chore, it is a fulfillment of their nature. A marathon runner doesn't wake up and ask, should I run today? They run because they are a runner. To not run would be to betray their own definition of self. When you shift your language from I'm trying to I am, you bypass the friction of willpower. Willpower is a resource you use to force yourself to do something you don't want to do. Identity is a state of being that makes the action inevitable. Controlled intensity is the result of an identity that demands excellence. When your standards are identity-based, you don't need a coach or a boss to watch you. You watch yourself, because your own self-respect is on the line. Part 4. The rule of never miss twice. A common misconception about standards is that they require 100% perfection, 365 days a year. While that is the ideal, the reality of the human condition is that chaos happens. You get the flu. Your flight is cancelled. A family emergency arises. The amateur sees a broken streak as an excuse to quit. They miss one workout, feel the guilt, and say, well, the week is ruined anyway, and they spiral into a month of lethargy. This is the what the hell effect in psychology. The professional operates by a different standard. Never miss twice. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new, lower standard. Controlled intensity isn't about never falling. It's about the speed of your recovery. If you are forced to miss your morning routine today, your non-negotiable standard becomes, I will be back in the seat tomorrow morning, no matter what. You don't let a lapse turn into a collapse. You protect the floor of your habits with a ferocity that prevents a single mistake from becoming a permanent failure. Part 5. The low floor strategy. One of the reasons people fail to uphold their standards is that they set the floor too high. They decide their standard for reading is 1 hour every night. On a busy day, an hour feels impossible, so they do 0. A master of controlled intensity sets a low floor, high ceiling standard. The floor is the absolute minimum that keeps the identity alive. Standard, I am a reader. Floor, I read at least 1 page every single night before bed. You can always do more, the ceiling, but you are never allowed to do less than the floor. Even if it's 2 a.m. and you are exhausted, you can read 1 page. By hitting that floor, you have kept the identity intact. You have won the day. You have proven to your subconscious that your word is law. Over time, the consistency of hitting a low floor creates more results than the occasional attempt at a high ceiling. Part 6. Social standards and the power of I don't. Your standards are not just internal. They are the boundaries you set with the world. One of the most powerful tools for maintaining controlled intensity is the shift from I can't to I don't. In a famous study published in the Journal of Consumer Research, participants were split into 2 groups. Group A was told to say, I can't eat that when tempted by unhealthy food. Group B was told to say, I don't eat that. The results were staggering. The I don't group was nearly 3 times more likely to stick to their goals. Why? Because I can't implies an external restriction. It suggests you want to do the thing, but you're being forced to abstain. It creates internal conflict. I don't, however, is a statement of identity and a non-negotiable standard. It is a closed door. When a coworker asks you to gossip, don't say, I can't talk right now. Say, I don't engage in office gossip. When someone tries to interrupt your deep work, don't say, I can't talk yet. Say, I don't take unscheduled meetings during my focus hours. This clarity protects your energy and signals to others that your time and focus are governed by a code. Part 7. Environmental standards. Controlled intensity requires you to have standards for your surroundings. If your desk is covered in trash, your digital desktop is a mess of unsorted files, and your phone is constantly pinging with notifications, you are accepting a standard of chaos. Your environment is a physical representation of your mind. A cluttered space leads to a cluttered thought process. A non-negotiable standard for a high performer is the clear to neutral protocol. At the end of every work session, you do not simply walk away. You spend 2 minutes returning your environment to neutral. You close the tabs, you clear the physical desktop, and you prepare the first move for the next session. Your standard is that you never start work in a mess. This discipline ensures that when it's time for intensity, there is no friction. You are creating a sacred space where excellence is the only option. Part 8. The price of the standard. You must understand that high standards come with a price. To have a non-negotiable standard for your health, You may have to say no to late-night drinks with friends. To have a standard for your work, you may have to be the boring person who goes home early to sleep. Most people are unwilling to pay this price. They want the results of the high standard without the sacrifice of the social convenience. But controlled intensity is an exclusive club. You cannot be normal and extraordinary at the same time. Your standards will make some people uncomfortable. They will call you obsessed, intense, or rigid. When this happens, do not apologize. Their discomfort is simply a reflection of their own lack of standards. Your job is not to make them feel better. Your job is to uphold the code you have set for yourself. The people who matter will respect your boundaries. The people who don't matter were only going to drain your energy anyway. Part 9. Practical application. Defining your top 3. You cannot change every standard in your life at once. If you try to overhaul your diet, your work, your sleep, and your social life simultaneously, you will fail. Controlled intensity is about focus. I want you to identify your top 3 non-negotiable standards. These are the lead dominoes. If these 3 stay upright, the rest of your life will follow. A physical standard, e.g., I never go 3 days without breaking a sweat. A work standard, e.g., I do 90 minutes of deep work before I check my phone. A mental standard, e.g., I do not complain about things I cannot control. Write these down. Post them where you can see them. These are no longer goals. They are the rules of your existence. From this moment on, you don't try to follow them. You are these standards. Part 10. The compound effect of standards. When you live by non-negotiable standards, something magical happens over time. You build an unshakable level of self-trust. Most people have a poor relationship with themselves because they are constantly breaking promises to themselves. They say they'll work out, and they don't. They say they'll start the project, and they don't. This creates a deep-seated sense of inadequacy. But when you hit your floor every single day, no matter how you feel, you prove to your subconscious that you are a person of your word. You develop a winner's identity. This self-trust is the ultimate fuel for controlled intensity. It gives you the confidence to take on bigger challenges because you know, with 100% certainty, that you will show up. You aren't betting on your talent. You are betting on your standards. And that is a bet you will never lose. Summary of Chapter 8. Standards are the foundation of greatness. To create yours, focus on the floor, not the ceiling. Define the minimum you will do on your worst day. Kill the internal negotiation. Decide once so you don't have to decide every morning. Use identity-based language. Shift from I can't to I don't. Never miss twice. Protect the momentum of your habits with a fast recovery. Clear to neutral. Maintain an environmental standard that supports focus. Pay the price. Accept that high standards will require social and personal sacrifices. Repetition phrase. This is who I am, not what I try. Chapter 9. Use strategic recovery. Part 1. The myth of the perpetual burn. In the culture of high achievement, there is a dangerous lie that has been sold as hustle. We are told that intensity means being on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are told that sleep is for the weak, that breaks are for the lazy, and that any moment not spent producing is a moment wasted. We see social media influencers posting from their desks at 3 a.m., boasting about their exhaustion as if it were a badge of honor. This is not controlled intensity. This is a suicide mission. True intensity is not a constant state, it is a rhythm. Think of a professional sprinter. During the race, their intensity is absolute. Every muscle is firing, every breath is calculated, and their focus is total. But the moment they cross the finish line, they don't keep running. They stop. They hydrate. They stretch. They lie down. They know that if they tried to maintain that 100-meter sprint pace for a marathon, their heart would fail and their muscles would tear. Controlled intensity is the ability to explode with power when it matters, and then, just as intentionally, to switch off. If you do not have a strategy for recovery, your intensity is just a slow-motion car crash. You aren't being productive. You're just vibrating with anxiety until you eventually break. Part 2. Stress plus rest equals growth. In the world of exercise science, there is a fundamental equation. Stress plus rest equals growth. When you lift a heavy weight in the gym, you are not actually getting stronger in that moment. In fact, you are doing the opposite. You are tearing your muscle fibers. You are creating micro-trauma. You are weaker at the end of a workout than you were at the beginning. The growth only happens when you leave the gym. During sleep and rest, the body repairs those fibers, making them thicker and stronger than they were before to handle the next stressor. If you skip the rest and just keep lifting, your muscles never repair. They continue to degrade until you suffer an injury. Your brain and your career operate on the exact same principle. Your deep work sessions, your high-stakes negotiations, and your creative problem-solving are the heavy lifts. They tear your mental fibers. If you do not provide the rest component of the equation, you are not growing. You are simply accumulating damage. Strategic recovery is not taking a break from the work, it is a requirement for the work. Part 3. The nervous system toggle. To master recovery, you must understand the two branches of your autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight mode. This is the gas pedal. It releases adrenaline and cortisol, increases your heart rate, and narrows your focus. This is the system that fuels intensity. Most high performers spend far too much time here. They are in a state of low-grade fight from the moment they check their email in the morning until they collapse at night. The parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest mode. This is the brake pedal. It lowers your heart rate, facilitates digestion, and repairs cells. This is where creative insights happen. This is where your tank is refilled. Controlled intensity is the skill of toggling between these two systems. It is the ability to push the gas pedal to the floor during a 90-minute work block, and then, the moment that block is over, consciously hitting the brake. If you are kind of working while you are kind of resting, you are stuck in a neurological no man's land. You aren't getting the benefits of intensity, and you aren't getting the benefits of recovery. You are just burning fuel while parked. Part 4. The elite case study. Working at rest. Look at elite performers, and you will see that they treat recovery with the same discipline as their training. In the NBA, players like LeBron James spend over $1 million a year on their bodies. They use cryotherapy, hyperbaric chambers, and strict sleep protocols. They don't see this as time off. They see it as preparing for the next game. In the corporate world, look at a leader like Bill Gates, who famously took Think Weeks, 7 days twice a year where he would disappear into a cabin in the woods with nothing but books and his thoughts. No meetings, no emails, no work in the traditional sense. Most people would call that a vacation. Gates called it the most important part of his job. By recovering from the noise of the daily grind, he allowed his brain to find the big ideas that moved the needle. The most intense people in the world schedule their recovery like they schedule their board meetings. They know that an exhausted mind cannot be a precise mind. They don't wait until they are tired to rest. They rest according to the system so they never get truly tired. Part 5. Active versus passive recovery. Most people confuse recovery with numbing. After a long day of stress, they come home and sit on the couch for 3 hours, scrolling through social media or watching mindless television while eating processed food. They think they are resting. But in reality, they are engaging in passive consumption. Passive consumption does not refill your tank. In many cases, the blue light from the screen and the dopamine hits from social media keep your sympathetic nervous system active. You wake up the next morning feeling just as heavy as you did the night before. Active recovery, on the other hand, is a deliberate choice to engage in activities that lower your heart rate and clear your mind. Examples include Zone 2 movement, a light walk in nature without a podcast or music. Breathwork, specifically focusing on long exhales to trigger the parasympathetic system. Contrast therapy, saunas or cold plunges to force a physiological reset. Non-sleep deep rest, NSDR techniques like yoga nidra that allow the brain to enter a state of deep repair while conscious. Active recovery feels like work at first because it requires discipline. It is much easier to scroll on your phone than it is to go for a 20-minute silent walk. But the return on investment for active recovery is 100 times higher. Part 6. Sleep as a weapon. If you want to be intensely focused, you must view sleep as your primary weapon. During sleep, your brain's glymphatic system turns on. This is effectively a waste clearance system that flushes out the metabolic debris, amyloid beta proteins, that builds up during the day. If you don't sleep enough, that trash stays in your brain. This leads to brain fog, irritability, and a massive drop in decision-making ability. A person who is sleep-deprived is effectively operating while drunk. Their intensity is gone, replaced by a desperate struggle to stay awake. The master of controlled intensity has a sleep standard. They don't view sleep as a luxury they get if they have time. They view it as a non-negotiable part of their operating code. They control the temperature of their room, they stop caffeine intake early in the day, and they view the 8 hours of sleep as the most productive part of their 24-hour cycle. They sleep so they can dominate. Part 7. Identifying the burnout cycle. Burnout doesn't happen overnight. It is a slow erosion of your standards and your energy. You must learn to read the dashboard of your own body to see the warning signs before the engine blows. Warning signs of a lack of strategic recovery. Cynicism. You start to resent the work you used to love. Decreased efficacy. Tasks that used to take 1 hour now take 3. Physical tension. A permanent tightness in your jaw, neck, or shoulders. Emotional reactivity. You snap at people over small issues, your internal temperature is too high. When you see these signs, the amateur response is to grind harder. They think they can outwork the burnout. But you can't outwork a biological deficit. The professional response is to downshift. They schedule a recovery block. They realize that a day of total rest will save them a month of subpar performance. Part 8. The discipline of the off switch. The hardest thing for an intense person to do is nothing. We have been conditioned to feel guilty if we aren't doing. You must realize that your worth is not tied to your busyness. Busyness is often just a form of laziness. You are doing many things to avoid doing the one hard thing. Strategic recovery requires the discipline to say, the work is done for today. Use a boundary ritual. At 6 p.m. or whenever your day ends, perform a physical action that signals the off switch. Shut the laptop lid. Change your clothes. Go for a 5-minute walk. Tell yourself, the session is over. My job now is to recover. By being as intense about your rest as you are about your work, you ensure that when you return to the arena tomorrow, you are a full battery. You aren't dragging your feet. You are ready to execute with surgical precision. Part 9. Practical application, the recovery protocol. I want you to implement the 90-20-1 rule and the weekly reset. The 90-20-1 rule. For every 90 minutes of high-intensity work, take a 20-minute recovery break. During those 20 minutes, you are not allowed to check your phone. You must walk, breathe, or hydrate. At the end of the day, give yourself 1 hour of total disconnect before sleep. No screens, no work talk. The weekly reset. 1 day a week, usually Sunday, you must have a no-output day. You produce nothing. You check no emails. You focus entirely on family, nature, and physical recovery. This day ensures you never enter the red zone of burnout. Part 10. The philosophy of the lion. Think of a lion in the wild. A lion is the epitome of controlled intensity. A lion spends about 18 to 20 hours a day sleeping or lounging in the shade. It looks lazy to the untrained eye. But the lion isn't being lazy. It is conserving energy. When the moment of the hunt arrives, when the target is in sight, the lion explodes with a level of intensity that is unmatched. Because it has rested so deeply, it can perform so violently. Most people live like caged hamsters, constantly running on a wheel, never resting, but never actually going anywhere. Be the lion. Rest with purpose. Recover with discipline. The goal is not to see how much you can endure. The goal is to see how much you can achieve. And the bridge between endurance and achievement is strategic recovery. Summary of Chapter 9. Intensity is a resource that must be replenished. To master strategic recovery, understand the equation. Stress plus rest equals growth. Without rest, you are only destroying. Toggle your systems. Learn to consciously move from fight or flight to rest and digest. Choose active over passive. Scrolling is not resting. Movement and silence are. Protect your sleep. It is the glymphatic cleaning of your brain and your primary competitive edge. Watch the dashboard. Recognize the signs of burnout and downshift before you break. Schedule the off switch. Use rituals to define when the work ends and the recovery begins. Repetition phrase, recovery fuels dominance. Chapter 10. Become relentlessly consistent. Part 1. The silent superpower. We have traveled through the mechanics of focus, the psychology of stress, and the discipline of recovery. We have discussed how to plug energy leaks and how to build rituals that act as a bridge to deep work. But all of these principles, no matter how scientifically sound or practically effective, are worthless if they are only applied once. If you use these tools for a week, you will feel better. If you use them for a month, you will see progress. But if you use them for a decade, you will become an anomaly. You will become what the world calls a genius, a titan, or an overnight success. The final and most important pillar of the art of controlled intensity is relentless consistency. In a world that is obsessed with hacks, shortcuts, and quantum leaps, consistency is the silent superpower. It is the most underrated trait in human performance. Most people are capable of a single day of greatness. Very few are capable of 1,000 days of good enough. Controlled intensity is not about being a superhero for 24 hours. It is about being a professional every single day, without fail, without excuse, and without drama. Part 2. The mathematics of the long game. To understand consistency, you must understand the law of compounding. We usually hear about compounding in the context of money. If you invest a small amount and let it grow, the interest eventually begins to earn its own interest, leading to exponential growth. Character and competence work the same way. Every day that you uphold your standards, every day that you execute your rituals, and every day that you regulate your emotional temperature, you are depositing interest into your account of self-mastery. In the beginning, the gains are invisible. You might feel like you're doing all this work for nothing. But after a year, the interest begins to stack. Your skills don't just add up, they multiply. Your reputation doesn't just grow, it solidifies. The gap between you and the person who is only motivated once a week becomes an unbridgeable chasm. The person who works with 70% intensity every single day will always defeat the person who works with 100% intensity for 3 days and then disappears for 2 weeks. Consistency is the multiplier of all other skills. Without it, you are just a dreamer with a high heart rate. Part 3. The trust factor, internal and external. Consistency is the language of trust. External trust. Why do we buy from certain brands? Why do we follow certain leaders? Because we know exactly what they are going to deliver. They are consistent. If a brand is great one day and terrible the next, we leave. If a leader is calm one day and erratic the next, we stop following. When you are relentlessly consistent, you become a known quantity. People can build their plans around you. They can rely on you. This reliability is the foundation of authority and professional dominance. Internal trust. This is even more important. Every time you set a ritual and follow it, you are sending a signal to your own subconscious. You are saying, I am the kind of person who does what I say I'm going to do. This builds a core of steel. When you face a crisis, you don't panic because you have a history of showing up. You have evidence that you are reliable. Most people have a broken relationship with themselves. They make promises on Sunday night and break them by Monday morning. This creates a deep-seated sense of insecurity. Relentless consistency is the only way to heal that relationship. You don't need a self-help book, you need a streak. You need to prove to yourself, through action, that you are someone you can trust. Part 4. The case study, winning through longevity. Look at the most successful people in any field, creators, entrepreneurs, or athletes. Their secret is almost always longevity. Consider the world's biggest YouTube creators. Most of them didn't have a viral hit that changed everything on day one. They posted videos for 2, 3, or 5 years to an audience of almost 0. They showed up every week. They practiced their craft in the dark. While their peers quit because they weren't getting immediate results, these creators just kept executing. Eventually, the competition simply disappeared. They didn't win because they were the best on day one. They won because they were the last one standing. In the world of business, the legendary investor Charlie Munger often said that the first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. Controlled intensity means you don't interrupt your progress with emotional outbursts, burnout, or distractions. You stay in the game. You keep the wheel turning. If you can stay consistent for 10 years in a world where most people quit after 10 months, you are mathematically guaranteed to be in the top 1% of your field. Part 5. The no drama policy. One of the hallmarks of the amateur is the drama of the grind. They want everyone to know how hard they are working. They complain about the struggle, they celebrate the small wins with massive parties, and they let their emotions dictate their output. If they are having a bad day, the whole world knows, and the work stops. The master of controlled intensity has a no-drama policy. They treat their work like a utility, like the electricity or the water in your house. You don't applaud the light switch for working. It just works because that is its function. You should treat your consistency the same way. You don't need a standing ovation for waking up on time. You don't need a trophy for hitting your deep work block. When you remove the drama, you remove the emotional friction. You stop wasting energy on how you feel about the work and you just do the work. This quiet execution is what allows for true longevity. Drama is expensive. It burns through your energy leaks. Consistency is cheap. It's just a series of small, mechanical actions. Part 6. Integrating the operating code. As we conclude, we must bring all the principles of this book into a single daily operating code. This is the synthesis of controlled intensity. Morning, you stop relying on motivation, Chapter 1. You wake up and enter your focus ritual, Chapter 4, without checking your phone. This is the mechanical start. During the work, you maintain your emotional temperature, Chapter 2. You observe, don't absorb the chaos around you. You work with surgical precision, staying behind the glass. The environment, you have eliminated energy leaks, Chapter 3. Your phone is away, your notifications are off, and your desk is clear. The social, you speak less and execute more, Chapter 6. You don't tell the world your plans, you let the work be the announcement. The mindset, you are detached from immediate results, Chapter 5. You focus on the X on the calendar, not the money in the bank. You trust the root system. The stress, when things go wrong, you use your trained stress response, Chapter 7. You use the physiological sigh and reframe the pressure as a privilege. The standards, you live by non-negotiable standards, Chapter 8. You hit your floor every day, no matter what. The evening, you use strategic recovery, Chapter 9. You turn off the intensity and let your body and mind repair for tomorrow. This code is not a burden. It is a framework for freedom. It removes the need for thought and replaces it with action. Part 7. Handling the boring middle. There will come a time, usually about 3 to 6 months into a new journey, when the novelty has worn off. You've read the books, you've set the rituals, and you've seen the initial gains. Now, you are in the boring middle. The boring middle is the graveyard of ambition. This is where the work feels repetitive, the results seem to plateau, and the spark of motivation is ancient history. This is where the art of controlled intensity is truly tested. Anyone can be intense when it's new. Only a master can be intense when it's boring. During this phase, you must lean even harder into your rituals. You must find the micro-beauty in the execution. You must realize that the boring days are actually the most important ones. Those are the days that build the root system we discussed in Chapter 5. When you feel the urge to change things up, to find a new system, or to chase a new high, stop. Recognize it as an energy leak. Stay the course. Small actions, repeated without drama. Part 8. The self-belief bridge. Ultimately, relentless consistency builds something that cannot be bought or faked, unshakable self-belief. Self-belief is not positive thinking. It is not looking in the mirror and saying affirmations. Real self-belief is a logical conclusion based on a mountain of evidence. When you have shown up for 500 days in a row, you don't hope you can handle a challenge. You know you can. This self-belief is the final form of controlled intensity. It allows you to walk into any room, face any competitor, and handle any crisis with a calm, blue flame. You are no longer afraid of not feeling like it, because you know your feelings don't control your results. You have built a machine, and you are the operator. Part 9. The final charge. The world does not need more talented people who quit when things get hard. It does not need more visionaries who talk about their plans but never execute. It needs people of controlled intensity. It needs people who can stay calm in the storm. It needs people who can focus when the world is shouting. It needs people who can rest without guilt and work without drama. It needs people who can be relentlessly consistent until the goal is achieved. You now have the blueprint. You have the tools to regulate your temperature, guard your energy, and build your rituals. But the blueprint is not the building. The tools are not the work. From this moment on, your life is defined by what you do, not what you intend. Your intensity is no longer a wildfire. It is a laser. Your progress is no longer a spike. It is a steady, upward climb. Part 10. Conclusion of the journey. As you close this book or turn off this audio, do not look for a feeling of inspiration. Inspiration is a leak. Look for your schedule. Look for your rituals. Look for your standards. The art of controlled intensity is a lifelong practice. It is a path you walk every single day. There is no finish line, only a higher level of mastery. Go to your desk. Go to your gym. Go to your arena. Put your head down. Shut out the noise. Control the flame. And remember the code. You don't wait to feel ready, you execute. Calm is not weakness, it's control. Guard your energy like it's currency. Focus is trained, not found. Stay committed to the process, not the applause. Let your work introduce you. Pressure reveals preparation. This is who you are, not what you try. Recovery fuels dominance. And above all, repetition phrase, small actions, repeated without drama. End of chapter 10. This concludes the full book, The Art of Controlled Intensity.